Everyone, it's Raj from 3CB. Welcome to part three of our deep dive into potential center midfield targets for Arsenal this summer, which will be a massive summer for the team in trying to reach their lofty goals that we've heard about recently. And so, as always, I'm joined by Adam Rae Voge. Well, not always, but always on these. You know what I mean? And so, Adam, how you doing, man?
Hey, I'm good. I'm good.
Excellent. So now, for anyone who haven't watched the last two parts, first part was top five sleepers. Second part was the top five, quote, realistic targets. And now we're going into the top five dream targets. So you can see the screen. We're going to start with Tyler Adams at Leipzig.
Yeah. So I'm defining dreams here in a few different ways at the same time, as you'll see was when we kind of click through it. For Tyler Adams, this is a little bit more of an emotional dream. Like Raj, I'm an American here and a fan of the U.S. men's national team. So since I have a heart, I'm a big fan of Tyler Adams, who is the captain of that squad. He's a really fascinating player to watch for RB Leipzig because he can play a couple of different positions extremely well. A defensive midfielder, which is where he's spending most of his time. But you also see him as like a right back, kind of the rightmost defender, however they end up lining up. So he offers kind of that interesting double kind of utility. Maybe utility player is a little bit more of an American concept with baseball, but he's a player who could fill in as the backup number 6 when needed, could play in a 2-man midfield pivot when needed, and could also slide over to right back if someone like Takahiro Tomiyasu has a recurring injury. Although Cedric has played extremely well there of late. Now his fit for Arsenal is pretty questionable because at least the big need in the midfield is more of an attacking option, and he doesn't necessarily have a ton of skills there. But have all the feels for him, and I love the guy, and I'm sure he's relatively available. I read somewhere he's got a buyout in the 30s of millions, so could definitely be had. And as a player, I have a lot of warm fuzzies for. So.
Yeah, I see him more as a guy, like you said, because of his versatility, which I know Mikel would love. We've seen Tomiyasu, his ability to play multiple positions. If someone who can do that, they tend to just have that very, very high level of IQ and understanding to be able to adapt, right, to multiple different roles. And there's anything that I kind of see from that does Arsenal, it's that versatility. And because he does put a lot of demands on his players in that regard in playing with, being able to see things in a certain way. But like you said, if you're trying to go for that upgrade in central midfield, that's probably less so with him. I would kind of see him as a player or a team might go in and bring him in more as a not depth, but more as a cover player in multiple positions rather than anything else. So that's what I would see him. But I can appreciate the emotion, although I've been accused of not having a heart at times. So,
haven't we all?
Yes. All right. Next, Maxime Lopez.
Talk about heart. Maxime Lopez is, I think he's all of about 5'5" or 5'6". Came up through the French ranks with Marseille, and they ended up selling him to Sassuolo, where he's now just completely balling out of his mind. I think he's 24, and he's just like along the lines of one of our previous videos, we talked about Fabian Ruiz. He's taking like a crazy number of touches. The ball just goes to him, and he gets it to where they can attack. His progressive passing, his XG buildup, even the pass completion, right? Which for a guy who takes a pretty high number of longer passes, is just extremely high. So you look at him and there's just a lot to like. Now, if you were to ask him to sit deep and play a number 6 role, I think physically you'd probably worry about him. He's not Rodri, right? He's not standing at 6'3" and going to outmuscle guys. So can he really defend? I don't know. Not really. I probably wouldn't deploy him as anything other than like one of 2 in the midfield, so he has some coverage. But I have seen him compared, whether it was logically or not, to Santi Cazorla, another tiny magician with the ball. I haven't seen him get incredibly involved in like the final third attack, but Just a player that I really like, and it's hard not to like a player when he fills that much of any chart.
Yeah, I think part of it with defensively, I mean, his stats are okay, but he does have some of that dog, we call it, that quote, dog in him. He's a worker to an extent. So that might, prove well for him in the Premier League, although he is, a tad bit potentially physically limited in that regard. But he's certainly, I think, a potential, like you said, to play more in that advanced role that we've seen kind of in that 4-3-3 from Xhaka these days with Partey behind him. So, the offensive numbers kind of speak for themselves. Again, the question is, I think just some of the other aspects, if he's able to provide that balanced profile and how he would hold up physically within, and I always touch upon it, within the Premier League, which does have a higher level of intensity, higher level of, of sprints per game. And then we've seen it, and we've seen it more this year, is how much more physicality the officials are allowing, from some guys more than others. So moving on now to the next option is at Real Sociedad, a teammate of someone who is also potentially linked to Arsenal.
Yes. And one of multiple Mikels in that squad as well. If you watch a lot of Real Sociedad, Mikel Oyarzabal, sound like a douche when I pronounce names correctly. But anyway, so the first two are maybe a little bit more dreams, like if you're an American, Rudy, players you just love to root on. But I think Mikel Merino is maybe a little bit more of a fit dream. Mm-hmm. He's an really interesting and exciting player for me because he's a pretty big guy. He's like 6'1", 6'2". He's on the, he's right in the middle of his prime. And with being a player at Real Sociedad, he's going to be extremely in Mikel Arteta's window of attention, right? That's Arteta's boyhood club. So another great thing about Merino is that although some of these stats have not been amazing this season, as Sociedad have kind of struggled in their own right, he has played in the Premier League. He did a season at Newcastle under Rafa Benitez, and he was pretty good that year. So as a left-sided number 8, I think that would be an outstanding fit for him. He has the ability to get forward and attack. He's got good speed, and he also can bring some defensive contribution as well. So somebody that I think physically would be a great fit in the Premier League and tactically could really make a lot of sense is number 8. He's never been linked to Arsenal that I'm aware of. I do think he'd be a little bit on the more expensive side.
Yeah, just looking at his profile here, I haven't seen him play that much, but you can just see some of his progressive passing numbers combined with some of his defensive numbers as well. Relatively low touches, but then you do see his ability to win the ball in the air, which we know becomes important in the Premier League. And so, with that physical build and that profile, he's a very, very intriguing target. Moving on to the next one.
Yeah, so this is another guy kind of in the same age range in Mahmoud Nahoud, who's more, I think he just turned 26 in the last month or two. Just like a total mainstay at Borussia Dortmund. I think he's been there for 5 or 6 seasons now. It's like a usually most of the time involved player. And I think with some of the big names that have come through there recently, with Haaland and Jude Bellingham, I really think he's kind of an underappreciated player. Somebody I think that could make a lot of sense for Arsenal. He at Dortmund is going to be playing a little bit different of a role because he does have a Jude Bellingham on his in his midfield group with him, and of course there's your attacking number 8, right? But just a player who's like he's a glue guy, kind of oil in the engine for a club, and in terms of like having the experience to come in and play right away, he'd be a really good shout. Now, he's also got a really good gig at Dortmund, and they are selling Haaland, and chances are they might be selling Bellingham this summer too. So whether he's at all attainable is a great question, and I'm sure that club not needing money, it'd be a difficult negotiation.
Yeah, I'd be surprised if they let him go. Someone who's been there now for 5 years, and after letting some of those key players go as well. I mean, just based on the data alone, he's almost like a more robust Merino, right? In terms of his progressive numbers, in terms of his defensive numbers, and in terms of his aerial duels. So even his XG buildup, although we know at Dortmund that tends to be inflated a little bit as well. And so he's an interesting profile fit. The biggest question here, I think, is to your point, is he even on the market to the point where, you waste your time trying to prime away from them? I don't really think so. But moving on is the true dream. I think the dream of, the apple of everybody's eye.
Yeah. Yeah. I used to be in an exclusive club with this guy, but not anymore. The secret is out. The hive is like full at this point with Aurelian Tchouameni. Played phenomenally well with the French national team. Just as you can see, just dominant for Monaco, who otherwise are not a very good team this season. So, he's going to have a move. Maybe this is by including him, I'm opening the door to some other dreamy types. But at this point in his career, I think he's still only 22, being linked to the likes of like a Real Madrid. We've seen him linked to Chelsea. He's going somewhere significant. Now, what's the dream scenario with him? He's like a destroyer type in the midfield, but I also think that he plays pretty well in kind of a box-to-box capacity. Whether he's like a guy who's going to make a lot of difference in the final third is a great question, and I think that makes him maybe less of a fit for Arsenal unless Thomas Partey wanted to switch up his role a little bit. But my dream scenario is that Chelsea and Madrid and everybody else get a little too far over their skis chasing Declan Rice, maybe Frankie de Jong, and then Tchouameni becomes available to a freshly Champions League qualified Arsenal and makes the move. He's more attainable than those other guys that I mentioned because he's never made a big move before, right? So it's not a big club selling him. The fee is going to be probably lower. The wages will be lower than Declan Rice, I would expect, right? So maybe it's a little too unrealistic, but somebody that I still kind of hold out hope for.
Yeah, I mean, I think we know that realistically the chances are relatively slim considering who's coming after him. Mm-hmm. But I mean, if you're in a dream, you might as well dream about it. And I mean, considering his age, his profile, the attributes that he has, what he's shown this season. I mean, yeah, he's one of those guys you watch, you just know he has it, right? Like he has it in every capacity. Well, now everyone knows, but like you said, even if you watched him before, he has everything: physical, mental, I mean, technical, it's all there. And I think part of it with him is he's extremely competitive. You can kind of see that with him defensively. He takes a lot of pride in that destroyer capacity, right? And so, especially for a younger midfielder, he's really, really just a unique player. And the question becomes, what do you think his valuation would be like? Obviously, Declan might be in the triple, might be in that 90 to 100 range potentially. I wonder what Tchouameni's is.
I mean, you probably think he's like a 50 million, 60 million midfielder. I've seen Monaco asking for more in kind of the weird, transfer rumor mill, but I think you'd have a hard time going too far beyond that. There aren't a lot of success stories out of France, so you definitely have some power to push back. And at this point, Monaco would be missing out on even like the Conference League. So chances are you have an unhappy player on your hands too.
Yeah, I just have a feeling he's going to Madrid, especially if they're looking for like a Casemiro replacement type. Like they're trying to replace their whole midfield, right? They've been trying to. Obviously, they have a lot of aging profile in that midfield, whether it's Kroos, whether it's Modric. Casemiro's getting up there as well. And so, older, not to their age, but still, I think they're really looking to revamp that midfield. I would say, and then when, Real Madrid has a different type of knock when they come for you. And so, especially if they can go out and get, let's say, a Kylian Mbappe or even potentially a Haaland, right? That's hard to turn down that project. But like you said, who knows? Maybe everyone goes for Declan and they forget about, this kid in Monaco. So
I think you're probably right. He probably does go to Real Madrid. And one thing to not underrate is that that's also a French national teammate, Kylian Mbappe. So
Yep.
It's kind of a comfort level thing there too. I think he'd be a perfect replacement for Casemiro at the base of their midfield. So it's a tremendous signing for them. Love him to come to Arsenal, but at this point, I think the microscope is on a different kind of player.
Yep, absolutely. Completely agreed. So that does it for this. Maybe, we will go into at some point, let's say if Arsenal do, qualify for a top four, that might open the door to some other players. And that point, maybe we can get into at least, maybe discussing a Bellingham or a Declan Rice, right? And so maybe that's in the future. But as always, man, appreciate all the time, all the hard work you spent on this. And hopefully you guys all enjoyed listening to it and you learned some things. And I certainly learned a lot. Until next time.